Did you know a HMO can make you 3 to 5 times the income of a standard buy-to-let, but it can be 10 times the amount of hassle, especially if you get it wrong. So in today's video, I'm pulling back the curtains on the pros and cons of HMO investing. I think there's 5 pros and I actually think there's 6 cons. And the last one is something I don't often hear people talk about, so make sure you stay tuned for that. So I'm going to take you on the journey from cash flow highs to hidden traps. Hi, my name's Jim and I'm a property investor based in the north of England. I currently invest in buy-to-lets and HMOs, and I've actually set myself a target of owning 50 HMOs. And on this channel, I'm going to bring you along for the journey. I'm going to share everything I know and everything I'm going to learn, and also I'm going to share everything my network knows as well. So if you're interested in building up cash flow and learning how property investing actually works, make sure you drop me a follow, because I'm going to be posting weekly videos. So let's get into the pros and cons of HMO investing. Now you're going to have to bear with me, you're going to have to put up with my shocking GCSE level D art in this video, but hopefully it should try and paint a picture of some of the points I am trying to explain. So the first pro of investing in HMOs, and it's the reason most people do it, it's higher cash flow. So let's compare these two houses. We've got a 3-bed buy-to-let and we've got a 6-bed HMO. In this 3-bed buy-to-let, you would possibly get something like £750 per calendar month for someone to rent this whole property off you. This is typical for where I am in the northwest of England. It could be higher in different parts of the country, but basically you're gonna have one person renting the whole of this property off you by themselves every single month. Whereas in the HMO, you're gonna have 6 individual rooms, and let's say these are renting out for £600 a month. So that's a pretty simple concept to understand. Basically, the HMO, you've got 6 rooms because you're renting out by the room. Maybe you've done a little loft conversion on the side here, and you're renting every single room out to an individual person. Whereas in your buy-to-let, you're renting out to one person and they're just paying you one rent every single month. And this is one of the main reasons why a lot of people invest in HMOs, higher cash flow. So the second pro of investing in HMOs is you get a higher return on the capital you've employed into the deal. Now this means that you can scale a lot quicker. Now let me explain what I mean. So if you ever see the words ROCE, that means return on capital employed. This is a key metric to understand in property investing. So as we mentioned in our first example, we've got a higher cash flow. This tends to mean we're gonna have a higher profit. So let's say our profits each month after our mortgage cost, our council tax, gas, electric, our Wi-Fi, all that sort of stuff. Let's keep the numbers nice and simple and say it's £1,000 every single month. So that's our profit. So profit per year equals £12,000. But what about this capital employed bit? What does that mean? Well, capital employed, when you get your property valued at the back end, so once you've finished all your refurbishments, maybe you took it from a 3-bed to a 6-bed, you can get a thing called a commercial valuation. Now basically, a commercial valuation values the property based on how much income it makes and how it performs as basically a mini business versus the bricks and mortar. So the buy-to-let in the first example would get a bricks and mortar valuation, whereas our HMO 6-bed plus, most lenders will give you a commercial valuation. Commercial valuations tend to be higher because they're based on your sort of rent and your profit. So how much money actually comes in every single month, your rent roll. So in that previous example, you'll have a rent roll of £3,600 a month, and this will go into the equation for your commercial valuation. What this commercial valuation lets you do is it means you have less capital employed. Now typically, let's say you have a GDV, which stands for gross development value, and all this is the value of the property once it's completed its refurb and it's all up to standard and you get it refinanced. This is the back end commercial valuation. So let's say you get 400,000. And maybe you purchase the property for, I don't know, 120, and then maybe you spend 170 on it, and then you get it valued for £400,000. So that means at 75% loan to value, you can pull out £300,000. And let's say all of your costs, just to keep this really simple, are 315,000. So that means capital employed, another term for this might be money left in the deal, is £15,000. Now, return on capital employed is the return which this £15,000 gets you every single year. So in this example, if you've left £15,000 in the deal and your profit per year is £12,000, your return, your ROCE, would be 80%. Which is a really good high return on capital employed. So it's the return you're getting for the money you've left in the deal. So it's how hard This 15,000, because that's how much you're actually out of pocket for this deal, it's how hard that money's working for you and the return you're getting on that. Why does this mean you can scale quicker? Well, you can scale quicker because A, you're either leaving less money in the deal, so 15,000 on a HMO is pretty good, and then B, the return you get every single month is a lot higher. So you'll be paid back in 15 months from this HMO. So that means you'll have all of your money out of the deal, and it means you can go again to start scaling and putting that money to work in another deal. So this is the other major advantage of a HMO. You get higher return on capital employed because the profit you make every single month is higher. So this number is super good. And also, not only that, you can scale quicker because you leave less money in the deals and then you get that return on it. So you get all of that money back to you quicker. So that's the second major pro of why people invest in HMOs. Now, the third major pro is you can spread your risk across different tenants. So if we flick back to point one, around higher cash flow. So let's say Mr. Tenant has fell on hard times and he's lost his job. All of your £750 a month might go out the window. That means 100% of your rental income from your buy-to-let property has completely gone. Whereas if you look at your 6-bed HMO, and let's say, unfortunately, chap in room number 3 has fell on hard times and can no longer pay rent anymore, or for whatever reason, you would lose 16.7% of your income. Now, realistically, with a HMO, it's the last 2 rooms which tend to tip you from breaking even over to your profit. So really, with 5 out of your 6 rooms full, you should still break even. So you're spreading your risk across tenants rather than you've got 100% of your risk with one tenant. If something was to happen to them, you lose 100% of your income. Whereas if something was to happen to one of your tenants in your HMO, you've still got 5 other tenants to cover your costs as well. So this is another major pro of HMO investing. It spreads the risk across multiple tenants. Now, the fourth major pro for HMO investing is there's lots of high demand for HMO rooms. Now, this could be students, this could be working professionals. There's lots of sort of different niches within the HMO market. You know, if you're targeting a university town like maybe Liverpool or Newcastle, you might target students. Whereas if you go sort of maybe the commuter towns outside of Manchester and target professional workers who would be traveling into Manchester, you know, there's lots of different markets cropping up. Why is this? Well, generally in this country, the UK, we're not building enough houses, so there's not enough accommodation. That's definitely one of the issues. Second thing is workers and people are becoming a lot more transient. You know, you might work in Manchester for a couple of years and then maybe move to London. So the idea of getting a newly refurbished HMO room with all your bills included, it's nice, simple, it's easy. And then if your career takes you, I don't know, maybe down to London or abroad, you can just move out maybe on a couple of months' notice and you haven't got all of the sort of overhead of owning a property and the sort of angst of owning a property. So that definitely plays into why there's lots of demand for these rooms. Also, there's a bit of a shift in standards of HMOs. We're seeing older landlords exit and there's a new generation of HMO developers, which I'd like to count myself part of, that want to provide really nice, high quality accommodation for their tenants. So as long as you pick the right area and truly understand your tenant demographic, you should have high demand, which is another major pro for HMOs. Now, the fifth and final pro of HMOs is it's got strong appeal to angel and also joint venture investors. So what do I mean about strong investor appeal? Well, if we go back to our return on capital employed example, this return of 80% is really high, particularly in property investing. So this means it's more attractive to raising private finance or a joint venture partner. So maybe a joint venture partner will stump up all the funds and their money left in the deal will be the 15,000. So that's JV partner, smiley face. That's his money left in the deal. And then maybe you've got someone like me who's got the skill and knowledge of executing on HMO deals. And that's what I bring to the table. So he's leaving £15,000 in, he would be getting half of the profits every single month. So the return on capital employed would drop down to 40%, which is still incredibly high, given the fact the returns from your S&P average 10% a year. 40% is 4 times higher than that. So it's super attractive for angel investors and also joint venture partners as well. So this is actually how we want to scale our HMO portfolio. We want to work with joint venture partners and angel investors. So if you think this is something which would be up your street, I've got an investor waitlist in the description below. Make sure you fill it in and then we can have a conversation and see if it's going to work for both parties. That is Pro 5 of HMO investing. It's got a strong appeal to investors. Now, with every single upside, there has to be a downside. So on to the first negative about HMO investing, and that is higher management. Our HMO, let's say we've got 6 tenants. Again, similar to the cash flow point, this is a pretty obvious one with HMOs. You've just generally got more people in the house, so there's going to be more showers to break, more tenant interactions, more stuff going wrong. So there's just going to be more turnover of stuff, maybe more maintenance, more cleaning, that sort of stuff. So it does take more management. What I'm seeing nowadays is the best HMO operators are acting more professional. So they've either got a really good letting agent, which is something we do, or they bring lettings in-house when their portfolio is big enough. But everyone, the management side of HMOs needs to get professionalized. If you are trying to do it in between working and stuff like that, you're going to struggle because, you know, managing HMOs is a full-time job, hence why letting agents exist. So yes, this is the first major con of HMOs. Lots more tenant headaches, lots more phone calls on a Friday night saying the toilet is blocked. Now, con number 2, and this is something everyone talks about with HMOs, there is more rules and regulations. So what do we mean by rules and regulations when it comes to HMOs? Basically, in the UK, there's a national HMO document, and then each council will have its own individual council guidance. The national HMO document will set out general stuff about minimum room sizes, but then the council will have a guidance document setting out the specifics. And the council document is really the one you need to understand, because this is what you're going to have to follow to be able to get your HMO license. So that's sort of one part of it is the licensing. The second part is fire safety. So when you're going through your licensing, part of it, you will have to have a fire risk assessment, which is where a fire risk assessor will come out and check your property. So maybe if you've gone back to brick, you'll have to use certain rated plasterboard, and you'll have to have fire doors and all that sort of stuff. They will come out and check that. So again, it's a little bit more involved than a buy-to-let. I say a little bit, I mean a lot of it more involved than a buy-to-let. Buy-to-lets are honestly really simple compared to a HMO. So you've got local council stuff, you've got fire risk assessment, and then if you're doing a full back to brick refurb, you'll need building control sign off. So building control are basically coming in to make sure you're doing the build to the correct standards. If you're putting steels in, if you're doing a dormer, if you're doing an extension, they will come in and they'll actually sign all of that off. So council, fire, building control, and then the dreaded Article 4. So what is Article 4? There's a bit of confusion around this when it comes to HMOs. Article 4 basically waives any permitted development rights. So currently you can go from a C3 to a C4. The best example of this would be our buy-to-let with 1 tenant would be a C3 house, and then our 6-bed HMO would be C4, 6-bed. So we've taken that from a 3-bed into a 6-bed. Now, at the moment, outside of an Article 4 area, you can do this conversion under PD. Now that stands for permitted development rights, meaning you have the right to do it, which went a bit weird then. So outside of Article 4 areas, you can do a 3 to a 6-bed conversion, C3 to C4, under permitted development. Permitted development basically means you have the right to do it. You can still apply for a certificate from the planning department, basically saying that it is all legal. But outside of Article 4, you can do that. As soon as you go over 6-bed anywhere, you need planning. Now, what Article 4 does, Article 4 removes this permitted development right. So if you operate in an Article 4 area, like most big cities, so Liverpool, Nottingham, Manchester, basically all the big cities in the centre have Article 4. And it's basically a way for the local councils to be able to control the amount of HMOs, because you're not allowed to just do it, you have to apply for full planning. So it is a bit more involved: room sizes, fire, building control, Article 4, planning permission. And this is a massive negative to HMOs, because all of that stuff takes time and it can be risk, particularly when you go to planning. So that's definitely one of the negatives of HMO investing. So con number 3 when it comes to HMOs is higher upfront costs. So let's say, in example, we want to do a 3-bed to 6-bed conversion under PD. What are we going to have to pay for? Well, straight off the bat, we're going to have to get some drawings done. We might have to get a pre-valuation. We're going to have to pay stamp, legal fees. What else? Obviously, purchase price. How can I forget that? Stage 1 payment to the builder. You know, maybe we're using development finance, but we still have to pay stage 1 to the builder. We got our broker, building control. So all of this stuff costs money and is normally pretty expensive. So let's say you might be purchasing a property at, I don't know, 130 to 140 maybe. So all this stuff could be anywhere from 35 to 60k, and that's before we've got involved in the cut and thrust of the actual build. You build, you full build, For a conversion, might be around 160 grand. So massive con for HMOs is higher upfront costs. There's a bigger barrier to entry. Yeah, it definitely takes a couple more quid to get involved versus a buy-to-let. You know, a buy-to-let might be 100 grand purchase, 25% deposit, 15k refurb. You know, it's you know, that's sort of these type of figures rather than, you know, that might be your build. So yeah, definitely a con for HMO investing is higher upfront costs. Now, fourth con. Now, this is something actually I experienced on my first HMO deal we did last year, and this is valuation uncertainty. So before, when we were talking about the commercial valuations, basically the assessor will value it based on how much it makes as a business. So, you know, you've got R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, R6. They're all making you money every single month. And this will be part of the equation which the valuer should use to value it commercially. Now, what happens here is if the valuer doesn't understand the key three things, so if he doesn't understand the area, if he doesn't understand the rent you're going to get, three, he doesn't understand commercial vals, because not all valuers will understand commercial valuations. So if he doesn't understand them three, you're off to a bit of a stinker. And this is why having the right broker and the right valuer is so important when doing the HMO strategy, particularly if you're looking for commercial valuations, because if they don't understand these three things, you could get a massive down valuation. Now, this happened to us. We got £100,000 down valuation, and it would have made the deal, it wouldn't have stacked basically, because we couldn't swallow an extra 100 grand on the deal. What we ended up doing is finding the right broker who knew the correct valuers. So that's definitely a top tip, and make sure you find the right broker who operates in your area and knows all the valuers, because it could have killed our deal. But that is the fourth con, is valuation uncertainty. Now, con 5 is a little bit of a contradiction, because I mentioned it as a positive, that there's lots of demand for HMO rooms. But one of the cons can be market saturation. And this is where you need to understand the economics of your local HMO market, because there is oversupply of HMOs in certain areas. But again, it depends on the product you're bringing to the area. If there's lots of lower end HMO rooms that are super competitive, tenants are going to churn quite a bit and always move to, you know, a sort of newer product if it's at a similar price point. Whereas if you can offer something completely different, maybe better management, a different type of product, so maybe you do studio style rooms or with en suites that are a decent size, you need something to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, it can be a massive con, is HMO market saturation. Not only that, as HMOs get older, initially if you offered studio style rooms, you might have got super duper rents, but over time, those rooms aren't as new. So rents do tend to soften. So again, that can leave you vulnerable to sort of market saturation if loads of HMOs come to your area and your sort of voids end up going a bit higher. So that can be a con for HMOs. Depending on the area and knowing your own local HMO market, you need to understand if your HMO market is saturated. And finally, the one I've been most excited to talk about, and it is con 6 of HMOs, and that is limited capital appreciation. What do I mean by this? Well, you have your lovely buy-to-let property. Looks like a sad face. And then we know every 10 to 15 years, the price should double. HMOs don't work like this, particularly if you get a commercial valuation. You're not going to take a 6-bed HMO and it's 400k, and then in 15 years, it's not going to be worth 800k. Part of the reason for this is because, like I mentioned before, the product won't be as new, so rents tend to soften. They might go up over time gradually, but they're not going to go up as much as buy-to-let rents, because ultimately HMO is more a product-based investment strategy where tenants want something new, something fresh. So generally, as HMOs get older, your rents might sort of start to soften a little bit, and it's not based on a bricks and mortar valuation. It's based on a commercial valuation, which is fundamentally based on the rents. And that's one of the reasons why capital appreciation doesn't massively happen with HMOs. It is more of a cash flowing strategy. Don't get me wrong, over the long term, your HMOs will go up in value, particularly if the yield multiplier. Now, this is what a valuer will use when doing a commercial valuation calculation. And this is basically their best stab at understanding what the area is sort of worth. And different areas around the country have a different yields. The lower the number, the better with the yield, because then it's times by the rent. So the yield might improve if over time, you know, the area has lots of investment and that sort of stuff. But again, that's not sort of guaranteed. Buy to let, it's sort of a track record that is your capital appreciation strategy, whereas HMOs will be your cash flow strategy. Now, I don't hear many people talking about this, and it is one of the downsides of HMOs. Something I am aware of, and it is why I always want to be buying buy-to-lets as well as scaling my HMO portfolio to 50 HMOs, as I mentioned. But purchasing buy-to-lets along the way will always be a key strategy for me as well. Now, if that has whetted your appetite for some HMO conversions, I'm going to link a video to a 6-bed HMO conversion on the screen now. So make sure you check that out because they are pretty intense conversions, and I will see you in the next video.